So our first speaker is Deb Ryan. Where are you at, Deb? There you are. And again, she's going to talk to us about the value of volunteering, which I think is a good topic to lead off with. You know, even though things might be a little bit slow, we still need to stay involved with SP. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Deb.
Cool. Well, I want to say while I'm pulling my screen up, I want to say thanks to both David and Todd. I was all lined up to come up last year for the event, and I'm sitting here in Denver, so I'm not too far away, and was disappointed that last year we couldn't make that happen, but glad that I could meet with everybody this year. And I was talking to David earlier this week, and hopefully next year I can actually come up and visit campus and say hi and meet you all, both the alumni and the students. So as David said, my name's Deb Ryan. I'm one of the 3 North American regional directors for the Society of Petroleum Engineering. And so as I'm sitting here in Denver, the Rockies, which Montana Tech obviously falls in, is part of my focus areas within the North American region. So I'm really glad to be here today. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about, and I've only got 2 slides, I promise, so it's good. I don't want to try and actually have more of a conversation and stuff at the end of this, but just talk a little bit about my background and then how some of the volunteering opportunities that I've taken on throughout my career have really helped me throughout my career. So my path was conventional in some ways and very unconventional in others. Some of you can probably tell I have a little bit of an accent. So I am actually originally from Australia. I grew up in Perth, Western Australia, and did both my bachelor's in chemical engineering and my master's in petroleum engineering from the University of Curtin in Western Australia. Initially, when I did my chemical engineering degree, West Australia is a very big mining state, so had figured that I would end up in a mining town until I did a gas reservoir engineering elective in my final year, and I loved it. And so I quickly jumped on and did my master's degree in petroleum engineering and haven't looked back since, to be honest. I've been in the industry ever since. So I started with a company called Woodside, and very traditionally went into a graduate program at an operator. Woodside is one of the largest operators in Australia, responsible for some of the early LNG off the Northwest Shelf. Ironically, I ended up working in heavy oil offshore, but still in conventional. I spent some time in Libya with them back in 2008, and then took an opportunity. I followed a mentor, and so again, through my network, followed a mentor across to Brisbane to go be the reserves engineer for a company called Arrow Energy, which was one and still is one of the companies working on the coal bed methane to LNG projects. So really started to see unconventionals very early in my career, and you know what that looked like. And then because I was working on reserves, we had third-party reserve auditors coming out from the US at the time, because that was where the expertise for coal bed methane was globally. And I got to know a number of the people at a consulting firm here in Denver that some of you may have heard of, called MHA Petroleum Consultants. And in 2012, I spoke to them and made the shift to come across to the US. And I've been here in Denver ever since. I'm currently actually back at school doing my MBA. So continuing to learn, continuing to figure out, you know, developing my skill sets, which is something I think we never stop doing. And then in 2019, MHA was actually acquired by Sproul, which is a Canadian-based consulting firm. And I was the senior manager of engineering for them until earlier this year. I had led the acquisition and the integration, and it was I'd been looking at doing my own thing for a while. And so now I'm working with my own clients. And again, through the value of my volunteering and my network, I'm now building my own business. So that's kind of some of my background. And so I wanted to really talk about some of the volunteering that I've done throughout, not just my career, but just through my life as well, and how it's really helped me throughout my career. I've had some really interesting opportunities, and to be honest, I never really interviewed for any of them. Those opportunities that I just talked about came because of the people in my network and because of some of the volunteering and the opportunities that presented themselves from that. So one of the very first volunteer roles, and when I reflect on this kind of throughout my life, this hadn't occurred to me, but one of the first volunteering roles I took was actually just before I turned 20. I was still at university, And I used to do surf lifesaving. So the SLSC is the Surf Lifesaving Surf Club in Western Australia. And I was a member of the City of Perth Club. And I took on a role that actually had a lot of responsibility as the patrol captain for the club. We had a contract with our local city to provide volunteer services on the weekends. Oh, someone's not muted. But we had a responsibility and a contract that had to be maintained. And I was responsible for that at a very early age. And, you know, it was something I was hugely passionate about. It made me, you know, it got me involved in my local community. And I had actually an incident happen that was actually an ethical incident that was elevated to a judiciary committee of past presidents within that club. That wasn't a popular thing. A member had done something that they shouldn't have. And as the patrol captain, it was my responsibility to make sure that you know, that sort of behavior was not accepted. And, you know, at 19, had to sit in front of the captain and the judiciary committee and, you know, state my case. And it made me very aware very early on, as I started out my professional career, that not only does the value, you know, in value of volunteering, you get to participate in things you're passionate about, but you get to learn some very interesting life lessons along the way. But you also get to learn things about, you know, I stuck to my guns, and it was something that, you know, I learned, you know, about standing up for what I believed in. And the feedback and the response, I could have just let this thing go. But the feedback I got after it was that I had done the right thing, and people were really proud of me. And that, you know, in terms of my integrity, and I think that's something that throughout our careers, you know, we're always making sure that we're doing things to the highest and most ethical standards. And that's something I learned very, very early on. As I started my professional career, I joined a committee within my company called the Women of Woodside. And this was kind of an interesting thing. And it's similar to a lot of volunteering roles, SPE being one of them, where this organization was within the company and there was no rank. Essentially, I was a first year graduate or, you know, second year graduate at this company, and was on this committee with very senior women from throughout the organization, where we were running events. We were doing, you know, we would meet with the CEO and other executives. And very early on, it gave me a way. I learned very quickly the power of networking, the power of actually, you know, being visible within an organization, and what that does in terms of positions that might open, you know, that give you, you know, when you're applying for new positions within the company. It's one of the reasons I got the opportunity to go to Libya, because I was a visible person within the organization, and it was a way for them to continue my professional development. And so there's women that were part of that committee, and this is, you know, 16, 17 years ago at this point, that I still talk to, that are very senior now within companies like BP, and they've left Woodside and stuff. And that, you know, it's the power of networking and the ongoing value that you get from volunteer organizations, even within, you know, companies and organizations that aren't necessarily our professional societies, is hugely valuable. I'm going to talk about WEN and SPEE before I talk about SPE, even though my volunteering for those came after SPE, just because I think, given that this is talking to a lot of people that understand and know the SPE quite well. So the Women's Energy Network is actually a national organization here within the US. Again, I should say actually North America, because there is a chapter recently formed in Mexico, and they are looking at forming a chapter in Calgary. And I realized that it was a really good way for me to get outside of just the technical base. You know, I've been involved with SPE for a very long time here in Denver. That's how I met Todd a number of years ago when I first moved to Colorado. But I realized that through the volunteering that I've done at Women's Energy Network, I've had the ability to meet a lot of peers who aren't necessarily engineers or geologists, but they work in recruiting, and they, you know, run their own companies, or they're lawyers, whatever it is. And it's given me a fantastic peer-to-peer group that I have here, both in Denver, but also nationally, because some of the volunteering opportunities that I've taken with the national conference and then serving on the foundation as the treasurer have actually given me exposure and allowed me to meet a lot of women across the whole country that still work in the energy space, but aren't necessarily just petroleum engineers like a lot of us are. The other thing that joining the WEN Foundation allowed me to do was it allowed me to start exploring skill sets that I wasn't necessarily getting access to within my company. Being an engineer, you do some, financial calculations and cash flow calculations and things like that. But actually being the treasurer and having to do financials and fundraising and other aspects that are a little bit outside of what we normally do as engineers, from a professional development point of view, has been a really valuable and rewarding exercise. It's the same thing. So some of you will know the SPEE, so the Society of Petroleum Evaluation Engineers. And this is a very recent role I took on. And again, taking on the ethics chair role for that organization, I'm very new. I only really started in December of 2020. But part of that role not only is finding speakers to talk on ethics topics for the different chapters around the world, but it's also actually writing a column every quarter, not every month. That would be a lot, every quarter. And some of it is practicing that kind of skill set again, and being able to explore these different skill sets outside of, what I would normally do with engineering. But again, as a licensed professional engineer, that's something that's very important to our profession, and making sure that we're doing things ethically. So some of the volunteering opportunities I've taken on more recently have also been about what professional development can this particular opportunity open up for me that maybe I'm not getting from, my current work or, what I'm doing within engineering. So just something to kind of be thinking about. So SPE. Society of Petroleum Engineering. So I actually didn't get involved with the SPE until I moved to Colorado. And part of that, my university at the time didn't actually have a student chapter. We were only 17 people in my class, and only 3 of us actually from Australia. And so the curtain didn't have a chapter at the time. So I actually didn't even know about SPE when I was a student. So though I joined when I was at Woodside, but it wasn't until I moved to Denver that I started getting involved. And for me, initially getting involved in the Denver section was about meeting people. I was in not only a new city, but a new country. And it gave me a really good avenue to meet people, to be honest, particularly people within the oil and gas industry. As I worked my way through the Denver section board, so I started off as the reservoir engineering study group person. So I'm a reservoir engineer by background, and I worked my way up to being the chair over that time period. And I realized in 2018, when I was chair, that at that time, not only was the SPE Denver section board bigger than my company, but it was also had about the same kind of budget that my company did. And I think at the time, and particularly, when you go in and work for very, very small companies, sometimes those professional development opportunities aren't necessarily there. And so again, reflecting on the time I spent at SPE, and when I realized in 2018 that, like I said, the Denver section board was pretty significantly bigger than my company, it gave me a really good learning opportunity. There's a lot of learnings that go along as you move through your career and as you move into leadership positions, how we work with people, how we deal with people, your leadership style, and all of these kind of things. And being able to learn that in a setting that is not necessarily workplace was really valuable to me. And again, gave me opportunities that didn't actually exist within my workplace. As I've also then volunteered on different committees, because SPE, again, there's no rank within SPE in terms of, there's obviously board and different things, but, I am one of the youngest people currently on the International Board of Directors. That's not a hindrance in terms of the rank. And I'm with lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds. So joining things like technical committees for conferences on topics that you're really passionate about, or joining some of the leadership committees, has been a really, really valuable way for me to meet the senior people and senior leaders within the industry for my discipline. So from a reservoir engineering point of view, by volunteering on technical committees and working on program committees with with people that are, extremely senior within the reservoir engineering discipline has been wonderful. And then in 2019, I rolled onto the Business Management and Leadership Committee, which this was before I was on the board of directors myself. But that committee is made up of a lot of former board of directors from across the world. And so I got a really good, got to meet lots of really different people with lots of experience. And then recently rolling on as regional director, I think I echo a lot of what Todd said at the beginning in terms of, the public opinion about this industry is definitely a big challenge for a lot of people. And I know a lot of people that have left industry because of it, but I am so passionate about this industry and what we're doing. And yes, the industry is going to evolve, but I completely echo Todd's sentiment about, the fact that we're going to be around for a long time. And yes, it'll look a little bit different. And I love the safety and sustainability analogy. In 20 and 30 years time, we will be doing things differently, but I don't think we'll be gone. And so sitting on as the regional director and being part of, building the strategy for then what does SPE also look like, for the future, and how are we going to make sure that we are serving not just, the current members, but the students that are coming in to take over from us and the next generation as well, is hugely valuable and something that I get a lot of, I'm really proud to serve on the board. I'm really proud to be an SPE member and a petroleum engineer, and, to be able to meet and work with lots of people that also do that is really, satisfying from a professional development point of view. So I think, and I'm going to stop sharing my slides and stuff, but part of volunteering as well is coming back. At the beginning, some of you were talking about how you've helped with the alumni events in the past and things like that. The volunteering doesn't stop even when we, sometimes retire and step away. And it's a way for me, like I said, it's been something that I've done because it's about things I'm passionate about and has given me access to professional development opportunities that I was expecting and some that I wasn't expecting as well. But at the end of the day, I think for me, the biggest takeaway from all my volunteering has been the friendship groups that I have actually established by doing it. And that never goes away. And so anyway, I'm going to stop talking and open it up to questions and stuff. But like I said, I'm sorry that we're not all in person. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you all as regional director, and yeah, happy to chat. So,
thanks, Deb. Any questions for Deb? Let's see, Todd, I see you have one.
Sure. So, Deb, great message. I really enjoyed it. Do you see any? I know your talk was more about volunteering, but I want to ask a question about SPE.
That's okay.
Do you see any changes in the near future for SPE that we should be aware of, or maybe even the far future, kind of where you think SPE might be going or changing?
I guess one of the things that we are at the moment, and it's member retention and engagement at the moment, is something that the board is highly focused on. How are we, working with the members across, for me, across North America and specifically the Rockies and Canada that I look after, and how are we making sure that we're providing the value for the members to retain, and then also to attract, like I know the schools are having a hard time, how are we making sure we're attracting people into the industry and to being members and stuff. So we're very highly focused on that aspect at the moment, in terms of, and then the other aspect that we're also very focused on is obviously there's been this switch to virtual content and delivery, and what does that hybrid kind of look like going forward? I am one of the most social people that you will ever meet, and next time I see you, Todd, I'm going to give you a big hug. And but so not being a person, I find it very, very challenging. But what we've found is that, particularly at conferences and stuff, because people have been pre-recording and practicing, and, the content delivery has actually been, outstanding. So it's getting the balance right going forward. So the board's been very focused on those immediate needs right now. The big thing I think that's coming down the pipeline that people are probably expecting is the Gaia program that people may have started to hear about. I know I've been talking about it a lot, is SPE's sustainability program. And it's around how are we as petroleum engineers, as members of the Society of Petroleum Engineering, having conversations about sustainability, not to say we're transitioning away from fossil fuels, but very much, and that's why I like your discussion around the safety thing. How are we making sustainability part of our performance KPIs so that we're not flaring and that we're not, you know, discharging water, and that we're actually making conscious decisions about how we are going to improve our operations, you know, in a environmentally better manner. And so I'm working on that a lot. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing that's probably coming down the pipeline that's a little bit different, because the board did, sustainability was first moved into the mission back in 2018. So that was before I was on the board. But that's, I don't know, does that answer your question?
No, that's fantastic. That's really great. Both those things, I think the near and the long term are really important.
Yeah. You know, and I think we'll continue to see, you know, as we understand what coming out of COVID looks like. And even, I mean, we're actually in board meetings at the moment. We had the regional director meeting this morning, and we're not seeing the same thing everywhere, you know, regionally. Here in the US, the vaccine acceleration has obviously gone really quickly, which is fantastic, which means we can start, you know, things like ERTech. I'm so hopeful are going to be in person and that we can all go to Houston in July, which is going to be miserable because it's Houston in July. But, you know, again, we'll be able to actually be in the same room. But when we're talking about ATCE, there's going to be some of us that can probably go because we're vaccinated, but there's going to be a lot of members globally that aren't. My family's in Australia. They can't really get out or back in because there's no vaccine. They've locked down and they've gotten rid of it, but they can't really get in and out. So logistically, anyway, that as we figure some of that out is going to be interesting. But I'll stop talking. So, Sasha, did you? I saw Sasha took his camera on. So yeah.
Yeah. So I just introduced myself. My name is Sasha Link, a Canadian transfer student, currently just international liaison for our SPE club here at Tech. And you know, we've been doing a little bit of international outreach this semester. It's been going pretty well as far as those things are concerned. Just want to give a quick shout out to the professors and the students for putting this on. Really appreciate it. You know, the work that, you know, Seamus and Rob and those guys kind of did through the website and stuff was pretty seamless getting into the meeting and whatnot. It worked out really well. But I just want to mention too, like I said, so right now, obviously you've brought up kind of, we've all brought up kind of issues with all schools with enrollment numbers as far as, you know, engineering disciplines, petroleum engineering specifically. So one thing that I've been kind of trying to do was reaching out to, you know, the school I'm from, which is SAIT and NATE, and doing these kind of international outreach info sessions to try and, you know, boost enrollment numbers and, you know, make Tech's presence a little bit more known and, you know, expand their sphere of influence. And so we had our SPE elections last night, went really well. And I was speaking to a fellow member who mentioned that we had alumni, you know, in Aberdeen, Scotland, and that there's some, you know, schools, obviously, as where you're from in Australia there, and New Zealand as well. So essentially what my question is just, you know, I was just wondering your current connection with those kinds of schools, and just wanted to, I guess, introduce myself and suggest possibly following up, because, you know, I'd love to reach out with schools. I didn't even know they had, you know, petroleum engineering much, you know, in New Zealand. And I just looked it up, and, you know, there's that huge Maui gas field. They're hoping to increase, you know, exports to $25 billion in New Zealand, you know, by 2025. So, you know, I was just, like I said, my question was hoping just to be able to follow up with you, maybe to be contacting these schools, make Tech's presence known for, you know, potential transfers in the future.
Yeah. No, Sasha, thank you so much for jumping on. And I just threw my email into the chat. Absolutely happy to. And I mean, for anybody, you know, I'm your regional director, so happy for everyone to have my email address if anyone has any questions generally. But Sasha, please reach out. Would be absolutely happy to chat and have some of those conversations. And again, working with the other regional directors, you know, being able to connect you through their student chapters and to have those conversations. I'm absolutely happy to do that. So yeah, thank you for introducing yourself, and let's find a time to chat and continue the conversation. So.
Absolutely. That'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah, and then fantastic. I also just want to mention, sorry, I don't mean to derail anything here, but Sean mentioned this, you know, his comment in the chat there just about lithium or whatever. And I just thought I'd just post this for people's interest, but I was just watching a Canadian news program couple days ago, and they were just talking about how there's been some startups recently about actually extracting lithium out of produced water from old oil wells. So making, you know, a new profit, you know, new profit opportunity from old non-producing wells. And these, you know, the lithium content is quite low in a lot of these wells, but, you know, if you're just producing all this water, of course, you know, it's just something. But like I said, just replying to Sean there, maybe thought that'd be kind of interesting to follow up on for something of the Canadian industry, what, you know, we're doing right now.
That's really cool. And what I was going to say is the Gaia program framework that's being that's going to be rolled out, hopefully by the end of April, actually has really has 3 pathways in it, and they're innovation, measuring what matters, and listening and communicating. And as engineers, innovation and, you know, is what we do, right? We're problem solvers, and things like this that you just put up, Sasha, in terms of how are we going to solve these huge problems and these huge challenges. It's where I think as well, like I went into engineering because I actually loved chemistry. That's why I did chemical engineering. And there's going to be, you know, we have these huge energy problems. We know the world needs energy, and how are we going to address it? And I think petroleum engineers are going to play a huge role in that because of the way that we address and problem solve and, you know, look at things. So yeah, it's great to hear that there is stuff like that going on. I hadn't actually seen that one from Alberta, so that's awesome. So really cool.
Calvin, did you have a quick comment?
Yeah, I don't know how quick it's going to be, but yeah, I do. Actually, it's for Deb.
Yeah.
And I'll touch on, so Sasha, I've been to New Zealand, I've been to Maui, I've been to that gas field. It's been around forever, and New Zealand's actually taken a very long time to try to develop the assets they have. So I'm actually surprised to hear they have a petroleum engineering department there, because there's not really that pro oil and gas. I used to live in Singapore, and we make trips down there. But yeah, good luck to them is what I'd say. But Deb,
I think some of it, and just building on that, I mean, I think some of it, I think they're also looking, because I know one of the professors, at least at one of the schools, I don't know if it's the same one Sasha's talking about, but they're also looking at a lot of geothermal. And so it's, it's again, where are these crossovers in terms of, you know, as petroleum engineers, Todd made the comment of flow through porous material, and then, you know, geothermal's just hot water.
Well, it's been there.
So it's,
New Zealand's had geothermal forever. So is the Philippines. So, Chevron had a huge commitment to geothermal in the Philippines, and they sold it 10 to 12 years, maybe even actually more, because it just wasn't profitable. So I'm curious about that. But Deb, to your point about Gaia, because it's more of a challenge. You know, I think our industry is like rushing for the, let's say, what seems to be more the Hollywood version. Let's go for solar, for wind. What can we do in the oil and gas industry for ESG? We're talking a lot about it. But when, and this obviously is just my opinion, but from a drilling guy, I notice and have experienced the incredible amount of non-productive time that we lose every well, and as an industry. And if somebody would do the calculation about how much, you know, fuel we actually consume and waste, and said, well, look, why don't we tackle that? And the reason we don't tackle it is because none of the operators actually will tell you in their financial P&L how much NPT they actually think they incurred. They don't want to talk about it. So that's my challenge to Gaia. And is it Joanna Dunlap? I think I met, right? Yep. So I'm just reinforcing that I think as an industry, we do a lot better. How do you manage what you don't measure, right? And I
think I mean, the ESG stuff, I realize that the investors are really all about it, but to be honest, a lot of it at the moment isn't worth the paper it's written on. And the measuring what matters pathway within Gaia is how are we as an industry actually going out and capturing the right data and using things like data analytics and, you know, our production engineers and stuff to understand what is actually happening, you know, and how that relates back to, you know, total efficiencies and, you know, economics of system, all that kind of stuff. And so I actually agree with you. It's hugely important to understand these things instead of just jumping on, you know, a bandwagon for the sake of it. I mean, some of it's going to have to happen, but do
you think the operators that are all part of me, because I mean, I wasn't on the operator side, but when you talk to the to the HSE people, and I guess now there might be ESG people.
Mhm.
And the only thing I ever get asked is, well, how big was your flare and how long did you flare? Right. And okay, that's fine. You know, we can do that, and we're happy to do that. But I'm just hoping that operators can ask that hard question about, well, why aren't you actually, if you say it's 1.8 days to do a section, or, you know, 11 days to do a lateral, and it's taking you 15, those 4 days cost the environment something. It had an impact, not obviously to your bottom line too.
Yep.
But
no, and I think it's a really important point. There is a lot of waste in the system, and figuring that out to make sure that we're using all the resources efficiently is part of this, you know, it needs to be part of the solution. So
right.
yeah, really cool.
Okay, well, great. It's some good discussion there. Thanks, Deb.